Jamunatira Vanachari Jayadadha Madhuba Kunja Bihari Jayadadha Madhuba Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tarasat Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Se Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Sri Purushottam Chetra Ki Sri Ganga Maya Ki Jai Sri Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Hari Ram Sankirtani Ki Jai Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 5, Durvasa Muni's Life Spared. Text number 8. Is that right? 8. Yada visrishtas tvam ananjanena vai balam pravishto jita daitya danavam bahudaror vangri shirodarani Vrischan ajasram pradane virajase Yada visrishtas tvam ananjanena vai Balam pravishto jita daitya danavam Bahudaror vangri shirodarani Vrischan ajasram pradane virajase Yada visrishtas tvam ananjanena vai Balam pravishto jita daitya danavam Bahudaror vangri shirodharani Vrischan ajasram pradane virajase
Yada visratastam ananjanena
Yada vasistram tvam ananjanena vai balam pravishto jita daitya danavam bahudaror vangri dhirodarani Vrishchan ajasram pradane virajase. Yada visrishtastam ananjanena vai balam pravishto jita daitya danavam Bahu Shirodarani Vrishchan ajasram pradane virajase. Ladies? Yada vasristam tvam ananjanena vai Balam pravishto jita daitya danavam Bahudaror vangri sirodarani Vrishchan ajasram pradane virajase. Yada visvistastvam ananjanena vai balam pravishto jita daitya danavam bahudaror vangri sirodarani Vrishchan ajastram pradane pravajase. Yada, when, visrishtaha, sent, tvam, your good self, ananjanena, by the transcendental Supreme Personality of Godhead, by, indeed, balam, the soldiers, pravishtaha, entering among, ajita, O indefatigable and unconquerable one, daitya danavam, of the daityas and danavas, the demons, bahu, arms, udara, bellies, uru, thighs, angri, legs, shiradharani, necks, vrishchan, separating, ajasram, incessantly, pradhane, in the battlefield, virajase, you stay. O indefatigable one, when you are sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to enter among the soldiers of the daityas and the danavas, you stay on the battlefield and unendingly separate their arms, bellies, thighs, legs and heads. There's no purports for almost to the end of the chapter, so let's... Now, who is... Okay, who is speaking here? Let's get some context. Who is speaking? Ambarish Maharaj, very good. Yes, Ambarish Maharaj. And who is he talking to? And what is he doing when he's speaking? Huh? Glorifying Sudarshan, or offering prayers to Sudarshan. Yeah, okay. So let's just read. We're going to go up to yeah, we're going up to text 20. So here we've got a description of the potency, actually all of it is a potency of Sudarshan. O protector of the universe, you are engaged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his all-powerful weapon in killing the envious enemies. For the benefit of our entire dynasty, kindly favour this poor Brahmana. This will certainly be a favour for all of us. Who's the poor Brahmana? Durvasa Muni. Why is Durvasa Muni a poor Brahmana? Could be, yes. Although it may be that he's just a renunciate. Right? If our family has given charity to the proper persons, if we have performed ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices, if we have properly carried out our occupational duties, and if we have been guided by learned brahmanas, I wish in exchange that this brahmana be freed from the burning caused by the Sudarshan chakra. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second, who is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities, and who is the life and soul of all living entities, is pleased with us, we wish that this Brahmana Durvasa Muni be freed from the pain of being burned. Your Sukadeva Goswami continued, when the king offered prayers to the Sudarshan chakra and Lord Vishnu, because of his prayers, the Sudarshan chakra became peaceful and stopped burning the Brahmana known as Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni, the greatly powerful mystic, was indeed satisfied when freed from the fire of the Sudarshan chakra. Thus he praised the qualities of Maharaj Ambarish and offered him the highest benedictions. Durvasa Muni said, "My dear king, today I have experienced the greatness of devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For although I have committed an offence, you have prayed for my good fortune. For those who have achieved the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of the pure devotees, what is impossible to do and what is impossible to give up? What is impossible for the servants of the Lord? By the very hearing of his holy name, one is purified. O King, overlooking my offences, you have saved my life. Thus, I am very much obliged to you because you are so merciful. Ati karuna atmana. Well, being extremely merciful. Expecting the return of Durvasa Muni, the king had not taken his food. Therefore, when the sage returned, the king fell at his lotus feet, pleasing him in all respects, and fed him sumptuously. This is pretty interesting. Ambarish Maharaj hasn't eaten for a year, right? Yet when Durvasa Muni comes back, he feeds him sumptuously. Thus the king respectfully received Durvasa Muni, who after eating varieties of palatable food was so satisfied that with great affection he requested the king to eat also, saying, "Please take your meal." Bhujyatam. Okay. Text 20. Pritosmi anugrahitosmi tava bhagavatasya vai darshana spashana lapayar atityenatma medasa. Durvasa Muni said, "I am very pleased with you, my dear king. At first, I thought of you as an ordinary human being and accepted your hospitality. But later I could understand by my own intelligence that you are the most exalted devotee of the Lord. Therefore, simply by seeing you, touching your feet and talking with you, I have been pleased and have become obliged to you." Purport. It is said, Vaishnavera kriya mudra vigyeha na bujai. Even a very intelligent man cannot understand the activities of a pure Vaishnava. Therefore, because Durvasa Muni was a great mystic yogi, he first mistook Maharaj Ambarish for an ordinary human being and wanted to punish him. Such is the mistaken observation of a Vaishnava. When Durvasa Muni was persecuted by the Sudarshan Chakra, however, his intelligence developed. Therefore, the word Atmamedasa is used to indicate that by his personal experience, he would understand how great a Vaishnava the king was. When Durvasa Muni was chased by the Sudarshan Chakra, he wanted to take shelter of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And he was even able to go to the spiritual world, meet the personality of Godhead, and talk with him face to face. Yet, he was unable to be rescued from the attack of the Sudarshan Chakra. Thus, he could understand the influence of a Vaishnava by personal experience. Durvasa Muni was certainly a great yogi, and a very learned Brahmana. But despite his being a real yogi, he was unable to understand the influence of a Vaishnava. Therefore it is said, Vaishnavera kriya mudra vigeha na bujai. Even the most learned person cannot understand the value of a Vaishnava. Therefore, there is always a possibility for so-called Gyanis and Yogis to be mistaken when studying the character of a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava can be understood by how much he is favoured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of his inconceivable activities. Om Jnana Timivandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Tadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. So there's some interesting points here. Main one being that a devotee of the Lord is very, very special, especially a pure devotee like Maharaj Ambarish. And if we're to look at the character of a devotee, we have to be careful about understanding their character and their nature by looking introspectively, which is pretty much the character of a devotee when you think about it. Rather than look at we were discussing this the other day. You can't judge a book by its cover, right? Look at a book and it may be, like I've got a copy of Korma's Great Transcendental Adventure at home. The cover's all ripped and you can't even work out what the title of the book is, right? So if you were to judge that book just by the cover, you'd make a mistake, because the book is a fantastic journal, if you like, of Prabhupada's visits to Australia and the establishment of the Sankirtan movement of ISKCON, effectively, in Australia in the late 60s and all of the 70s up until Srila Prabhupada's departure. So, similarly, and I remember I used to go into town in Adelaide before I met the devotees in person, and I used to see the Harinam party, and I used to think, what a raggle-taggle bunch of scruffs, right? And what a, there was a television show when I was a teenager. It was called F Troop, right? And F Troop was like if you have A, B, C, D, E, F, right? F is right down the bottom. Right? In fact, when I was at high school, first year high school in Port Pirie, we had that number of forms we had that number of classes in first year, and the guys who were in, F, we used to call F Troop. In fact, one of the fellows at F Troop took a disliking to me, just walked up to me one day and went, just punched me straight in the face, right? I'm not suggesting that the devotees are like that, by the way. But anyway, a little raggle-taggle. F Troop was a comedy show about a US cavalry troop who were called F Troop, and they were just a raggle-taggle bunch of misfits, right? And but I'd see the devotees chanting Hare Krishna, and I could somehow sense or feel there's some mystic potency here, right? So on the one hand, I was thinking, what an odd bunch, so somewhat kind of like, you know. But on the other hand, strongly attracted to the activities of the devotees and the chanting of Hare Krishna. And somehow I got this idea, I don't know where it came from, that, you know, these people, they can do anything. Right? I remember I went with Sikhi Pucha the week before Janmashtami. We went to, actually it might have been before another festival. Anyway, we went out into Loxton and Renmark in that area, and that's the citrus fruit growing area of South Australia. They've just got acres and hectares of lemon trees and orange trees, right? So we'd just drive up to a farm and Sikhi Pucha said, you wait here in the van, and then he'd knock on the farmer's house door and then ask if we could, actually he would tell them, we have a youth outreach program and we're helping, you know, marginalised youth, and he'd point to me, there's one of them. And then we're having a festival, could you give us some oranges? Right? Oranges and lemons, right? So the farmer said, yeah, sure, just go down here, and gave us a bag, bucket. And so up the tree I went picking oranges and lemons, right? And I saw Sikhi Pucha do this on more than one occasion. And I remember on Janmashtami Day, we went up into the Adelaide Hills, and the temple needed flowers, right? And no money to buy flowers, I guess. Anyway, went up to the hills, went to a flower grower, knock on the door. Sikhi Pucha says, well, I don't actually know what he said because I wasn't standing next to him, but has a chat with the farmer, and the farmer says, yeah, sure, no worries, you can pick all the flowers in this. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't fathom how Sikhi Pucha had this potency that whenever he would knock on the door of a farmer, right, he would ask for something, and the farmer would just say, yeah, sure, go and pick it, right? I just thought that was just incredible. Where did he get that? And if you knew Sikhi Pucha Dara, he's a pretty diminutive kind of a character. Very, down to earth, ocker, right? He's a real Aussie. And maybe that was his appeal to people because he's a very straightforward kind of a character. But, so that just reinforced this idea that, you know, devotees could do anything. What to speak of, you know, I'd hear the Sankirtan results of the book distributors who were going out and selling books on the streets. And that really just impressed me so much that against so much opposition and so much negativity, really, the devotees were able to go out and distribute books and also come home with some donations. That really. So even though if you externally saw some of the devotees, you'd think, what are these? Who are these fellows, right? If you looked at their activities, then you could see their devotion to Krishna. If not to Krishna, certainly to Srila Prabhupada, right? The devotees dedicated their whole lives to serving Prabhupada. So, if you look at the external, although some of their activities are quite extraordinary, you might think, like I did, F-troop, right? Raggle-taggle bunch of misfits. But if you look at the results of their service to Krishna, and one of the things that really struck me actually was on the first weekend that Chincharupa and I stayed in the temple. It was Janmashtami and then Vyasa Puja. Right? And it was the first occasion of us staying in the temple, because half the Adelaide temple had come to Melbourne, so they were short on manpower. So, and Chincharupa and I basically were, whatever the devotees asked us to do, we did it. We just, the first Sunday feast that we went to, Hare Prabhu gave the Sunday feast lecture, about an hour and a half long, I think it was. But we were super impressed, because Hari's presentation of the philosophy and the Varnashram and how to apply, Krishna consciousness, how to apply a yogic lifestyle, if you like. So anyway, at the end of that lecture, one of the devotees was preaching to me over prasadam, and he said, do you know how to chant Hare Krishna? And I said, yes. He said, okay, you should chant 16 rounds, here's your beads. Right? So I thought, okay, no worries, we'll do that. Actually, he said, do you think you can chant 16 rounds? I said, yeah, sure, shouldn't be a problem. So, whatever the devotees told us to do, we basically embraced it. We enjoyed the association of the devotees. And but the thing that really struck me, and actually on Vyasa Puja Day, it was interesting because it was a Sunday, and the devotees had decided that they would celebrate the Vyasa Puja at the Sunday feast program. Right? Which was at 4:30 or whatever, 4. And so because it was going to be so late, rather than fasting till midday, we would have breakfast, right? Which I didn't complain about, or didn't even understand the significance of. Right? Because ordinarily, you would fast all the way up until midday at least for the Vyasa Puja. But the thing that really struck me was the offerings to Srila Prabhupada, the Vyasa Puja offerings, were these deeply heartfelt and, well-spoken, articulate. Such a shock in many respects, because the devotees appear to be very simple and not overly sophisticated, but yet when it comes to the glorification of Srila Prabhupada, all of this learning and erudition came out. So it's really woo. So Durvasa Muni's made the mistake of his character, the depth of his relationship with the Lord as a great devotee. Well, okay, Ambarish Maharaj was a Kshatriya, right? And an immensely powerful Kshatriya, the ruler of the whole planet, effectively, or even further afield. And of course, Durvasa Muni is a Brahmana, right? And a yogi. So from an external observation, Ambarish Maharaj is, it's interesting, isn't it? In the relationship between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Maharaj Prataparudra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't want to associate with Maharaj Prataparudra because, as Prabhupada says in the purports, he's a pounds, shillings and pence man, right? So Ambarish Maharaj is let's say, a pound, shillings and pence man, right? In relationship to Durvasa Muni, who's a Brahmana and also a very exalted and advanced yogi. Huh? So the natural position of the Kshatriyas is to serve the Brahmanas, right? This is the natural relationship in the traditional Varna and Ashrama system. And of course, Ambarish Maharaj was fully qualified and competent to serve Durvasa Muni. But Durvasa Muni had somewhat of a critical eye, if you like. And so, out of his affection and out of his devotion for the Lord, Ambarish Maharaj was performing the Chaturmasya Brata, right? Well, not he was just performing the Ekadasi Brata, right? And so for a year he was observing the Ekadasi Brata very strictly. And this was the last day of that observance, right? And so the Tithi was approaching where he had to break his fast, right? Yet he understood, he was in a conundrum because Durvasa Muni was arriving, and of course Ambarish Maharaj knew very well the etiquette of receiving a Brahmana, right? And especially an exalted yogi like Durvasa Muni, and also perhaps, one who had a reputation of short-temperedness. Right? And I think also, didn't he arrive with his 30,000 disciples as well? Can you imagine what a great devotee and king was Ambarish Maharaj, because he had the capacity to serve the Durvasa Muni and his disciples, 30,000 of them. So he had a challenge. What will I do? Well, I've got to break my fast, but at the same time I need to be attentive to my guests, to my visitors. And so, and of course the etiquette is you don't eat before your guests are served. Right? Is that right? When you have guests coming to your place, do you eat before they arrive? No. When I go to most of my friends' houses, they feed their children before they feed me. There was a funny. When I was a very young devotee, a brahmachari, in late 70s, we all used to go into the kitchen with korma. Everybody had to go into the kitchen with korma to cook the Sunday feast. And we didn't get more than 150, 200 people come to the Sunday feast in those days. Right? So korma would cook very opulent feasts. Right? I remember one time we cooked stuffed puris. Right? Puris stuffed with like a sour cream. They were delicious. But the effort you had to go into cooking, say we had 150 people coming, that meant you had to make 300 of these things at least, maybe more, to make sure that everybody had two each, because you couldn't just serve one. Right? You had to serve at least two, and of course anybody could eat three. Plus there'd be a couple of sajis, rice, a few sweets, always a delicious, always often a freshly squeezed juice drink. Korma's feasts are quite memorable. Well, they're memorable now. So anyway, we prepared the feast, it was offered, and then we would serve out. Right? And then what Balaram and Korma discovered was that we were so nasty to the guests, they realised, okay, all right, fellas, you have to eat the feast first before you serve the guests, because we were just so grumpy, and hungry. But that's not really the etiquette. The etiquette is we distribute, prasadam is for others, not for us. And so we can see that with that mood of Ambarish Maharaj was, serve others first. Krishna will look after us, right? Have you noticed anybody around here going hungry? Or losing weight even? No, not at all. Yeah. So, Ambarish Maharaj's quandary was, how do I break my fast? The titi is coming, I need to break the fast and avoid the offence of not following my brata and not offend Durvasa Muni, who I shouldn't eat before he arrives. Right, that's it. So he decided, I'll take some water, but which is kind of not breaking the fast, but could be recognised as at least taking something. Right? So that was his solution. But then when Durvasa Muni witnessed that Ambarish Maharaj had drunk some water before he came, he got angry and wanted to curse him, which is incredible because here we see Ambarish Maharaj is forgiving Durvasa Muni for cursing him. Even though the curse was unjustified, Ambarish Maharaj was so liberal a devotee that he forgave that offence of Durvasa Muni. But Lord Vishnu, in the form of the Sudarshan Chakra, did not. Right? Did not. So here we're seeing Ambarish Maharaj, who was set upon unnecessarily, and really in an offensive way, was cursed by Durvasa Muni. Therefore, the Sudarshan Chakra chased him. And here's as it's described here by Prabhupada, Durvasa Muni was so elevated he could go to see Lord Brahma. That means he was going to the topmost planetary systems in the universe. And then he was able to go and see Lord Shiva, who is considered to be beyond the material realm in his own special domain, and then beyond that to Vaikuntha. So Durvasa Muni is immensely powerful yogi, yet he still couldn't be relieved from the burning of the Sudarshan Chakra, right? Because of his offence to Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish Maharaj is pretty much the archetypical devotee, as we've discussed before. In the verses that describe Ambarish Maharaj's devotional service, it's not unlike any of us. Right? His first qualification was that he always remembered Krishna. Manmana bhavamad bhakto is Krishna's instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. Think of me, be my devotee. So Ambarish Maharaj, Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. He was always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord. He was always engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. And as we've discussed many times, he would go to the temple, Koro Hare Mandira. And what would he do? Marjanadi Shu. He would clean the temple. Right? He would go on the roster, we could assume, right? So these are the activities of a fairly simple devotee, right? He would associate with the devotees. He would taste the tulsi, smell the aroma of the tulsi and the flowers and the incense offered to the Lord. So the activities of Ambarish Maharaj are as emblematic of or symptomatic of the 9 processes of devotional service. And because of that engagement, he's a very elevated devotee. And that was misunderstood or misread by Durvasa Muni. And of course Durvasa Muni, as is explained here, found out from experience, right? Atma Medasa, by my own intelligence. Medasa means intelligence, right? By my own intelligence derived from, and this is a learning process, a learning process, not the highest of learning processes, but he learned by experience, right? That Ambarish Maharaj is a very exalted devotee. Right? Durvasa Muni was a renunciate. Ambarish Maharaj was a grihasta. Durvasa Muni was a brahmana. Very highly learned. Whereas Ambarish Maharaj was a Kshatriya. So therefore in one sense, in the social hierarchy, lesser. But as it turns out, Ambarish Maharaj was superior to Durvasa Muni. So much so that when Durvasa Muni offended Ambarish Maharaj, then the Lord sent his Sudarshan Chakra to protect Maharaj Ambarish from the demons that were unleashed, or by the demon that was unleashed by Durvasa Muni for the offence of drinking some water before Durvasa Muni had his breakfast. So that's... And here, just see, it wasn't that Ambarish Maharaj wasn't able to perform austerities, right? Because he's waited a year now for Durvasa Muni to come back, and now he's going to feed him breakfast. He's going to sufficiently honour and fate, I guess, fate, F-E-T-E, not F-A-T-E, right? And in the word fate is feast, right? Actually, fate, feast, a French word, fate, F-E, F-E with an acute, is it? Fate, F-E-T-E. So, Durvasa Muni has come to the realization, after approaching Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and arriving in Vaikuntha to see Lord Vishnu, to discover that the Sudarshan Chakra is still hot on his tail. So he's feeling the heat. So Prabhupada quotes this verse and does so on more than one occasion, that one has to be careful about judging the character of a Vaishnava. Of a devotee. And he quotes this verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that states that even very learned and educated persons have difficulty in understanding the character of a devotee. Because sometimes a devotee will act in ways that are not clearly understood, but that are deeply inspired by their bhakti or by their devotional service. An example that I was thinking of this morning is Arjuna. You know, Arjuna was one of the most powerful Kshatriyas, expert in all of the arts of warfare and trained for combat, right? And yet, when he came before the opposing sides on the battle of Kurukshetra, he broke down effectively, right? And started crying, dropped his weapons. And so, a little hard to understand. Why is this Kshatriya who's trained to fight, breaking down and crying like a child or like a baby? But of course, as is explained by the Acharyas, this was actually Krishna's arrangement. And it showed the soft-hearted nature of a devotee. He understood the folly of fighting over the kingdom, right? He understood the folly, that it would bring the destruction of everybody. No one would be a winner in that fight. And Arjuna knew that. And he knew that his cousins were misguided and misdirected, and that, ultimately that everything would be destroyed. Therefore his arguments to Krishna in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is sometimes called, Vishada Yoga, the yoga of bewilderment, right? Arjuna was bewildered. So here's a great devotee, a great Kshatriya, and he starts crying, right? So from an external point of view, he's powerful Kshatriya. Why is he demonstrating these qualities? And of course we understand from the Acharyas why. So if we look from the external, it may be difficult then to understand. But if we understand the heart of Arjuna and the heart of a devotee, that very often explains their activities. But unless one has that vision, if we're just looking from the external, difficult to understand. But if we are able to perceive things introspectively from within, and we see the heart of a devotee, and here we see with Ambarish Maharaj, his heart is so soft and so expansive that even though Durvasa Muni has cursed him, in other words, he wanted to kill him, right, because he broke his fast, which is such an extreme response, right? Still, and even though the Sudarshan Chakra of Lord Vishnu wanted to kill Durvasa Muni as a result of his offence, Ambarish Maharaj forgave him. Well, such a generous, magnanimous personality, devotee, actually. So, understanding the heart and the depth of compassion and the depth of devotion and the depth of learning also can only be observed, and Prabhupada mentions here, by seeing how much Krishna has favoured the devotees. Where the devotee gives everything to Krishna, then Krishna gives himself. And we see that with Ambarish Maharaj, the opulence of, and that's the realization that Durvasa Muni came to from his experience. Ambarish Maharaj must be a very exalted devotee, because I wanted to kill him. He was then protected by Lord Vishnu's Sudarshan Chakra, and nobody could withdraw the Sudarshan Chakra. Nobody would or could, even Lord Vishnu himself. And out of compassion for Durvasa Muni, Ambarish Maharaj forgave him and said to the Lord, please relieve the distress. You know, and this is one of the characteristics of a devotee, is they don't like to see others suffer. And so even though Ambarish Maharaj was being attacked effectively by Durvasa Muni, he forgave him. He didn't like to see his distress, even though he was an offender. He didn't take the offence. He was compassionate to Durvasa Muni and wanted to relieve him of his distress. And so when Ambarish Maharaj forgave him, then of course Durvasa Muni was greatly appreciative, and by that stage had come to the realization that Ambarish Maharaj is a very, very, very special devotee, as are all devotees actually. Sometimes I wish I could go back to being a new bhakta. Right, because that's when I only saw all devotees as pure devotees. Unfortunately, I've been living with them too closely now. I have a different perspective on life. But we have to be careful. Right? We do have to be careful. I prefer to go back to those days when I saw the Hare Krishna devotees, and in my first moments of association, I thought they could do anything. And of course we know devotees can do anything. Even these days we see Mahalakshmi, right? And Mahalakshmi is not really Maha at all, right? It should be Mini Lakshmi. But of course we know why she's called Mahalakshmi, because she's such a good book distributor, and also, a good fundraiser, and she enjoys doing it, and she does it in a very polished way, and with great devotion as well. And of course all of the other devotees who have done significant service in distributing books. And of course, that's the greatest sign of compassion for others, is to ultimately, book distribution means giving knowledge. And the knowledge that will remove the distress of everybody, that's the reality. And that's Lord Chaitanya's mission also. Prabhupada's mission was to relieve the distress of everybody, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas and following in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we need to be careful about looking at the externals. We can't judge a book by its cover. We need to read the book to understand. And so we need to develop that proper vision, or that proper introspection, to see internally into the heart, into our own heart first, and remove the inebrities and the anartas. Like Durvasa Muni, he could say, "Oh, you made a fault." We've got to be careful about that kind of mentality. If we have the fault-finding mentality, Prabhupada recommends, the acharyas recommend, use that to look at yourself. What is it? Adosha darshi. Don't see the faults. And gunagrahi. Look for the good. Because that doesn't mean we're blind or oblivious, to what's actually going on around us. But broadly speaking, the mood of a devotee is see the positive and encourage that. Okay, I'll finish here. Does anybody have any comments or questions or thoughts? I think you need to press the button. Yeah, that's it.
Very good class. Thank you very much, Prabhu. I was thinking about the point you made about you have to be careful how you deal with others, because you don't know really who they are. And they could be something much more than what you think they are.
Mm.
And our best example is Srila Prabhupada.
Mm.
Because he told us that when he was with his spiritual master, the dealings were always very friendly. So Bhaktivedanta Saraswati liked this boy, Abhay Charan, and he would talk very freely with him sometimes. So much so that a lot of the leading sannyasis in the Gaudiya Math, they were thinking, this is just some pacha grihasta. Pacha means rotten.
Mm.
So they had that disdain, the sannyasis, for the householders. But Prabhupada he was told actually by one of the sannyasis, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So Prabhupada said that I thought, well, fool I may be, but that's my relationship with my spiritual master. And there was a meeting, I think, of some of the leaders of the Gaudiya Math with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in 1934. And they had appreciated Prabhupada's helping them to establish a centre in Bombay. And So they recommended to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that Abhay is very expert in what he does. He can raise the funds, he's a good manager. So they were recommending that he be considered to be the temple president of the Bombay Gaudiya Math. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he said no. He said he's better off outside of your company. Your company. Said in the future, he will do everything on his own.
Yeah.
And when Prabhupada heard that, he said, I was thinking that I will alone do everything. How is that? How is that possible? So Prabhupada was, this is another example. Bhaktisiddhanta was giving a talk. And at one point he said, in the future, one person will come who is in our company, but you won't see him. And he will fulfill this desire of Bhaktivedanta Thakur. And this story was told by another God brother who was at that meeting. And when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that there's one amongst us, but it was hidden, you won't see him yet. So he said when he was saying that, he saw he was looking at a particular spot in the group, and he was looking directly at Prabhupada.
Mm.
So we're not necessarily going to see what a person is. Prabhupada was hidden for many years. Govinda Maharaj, he was he inherited the Saraswat Chaitanya Mat from Śrīmad Maharaj.
Yeah.
And he told Śrīmad Maharaj that you think that Abhay Babu is just, a nice grihasta, but he is more than many yogis. So he had an appreciation. Prabhupada was just in his learning, his deportment, the way he lived his life. It was just naturally austere.
Mm.
But that's probably a good example. So
I remember when we installed Srila Prabhupada here, and I thought, God, he's so small. Because in my mind, Prabhupada was this huge person.
that was my first impression also. When Prabhupada arrived in Sydney in 1972, I'd been in the temple for 6 weeks. And we'd gone from about 10 or 12 devotees when I joined to about 45 devotees when Prabhupada came 6 weeks later. And I'd just given up everything I had to join the temple. For the first time in my life, I'd had some money because I'd spent 6 months up in the mining camps in Western Australia. So I had about $1,500 for that. In those days, you could buy a new car, a good one, for that. And there was a lot of apprehension when we heard that Prabhupada was coming. We were excited, but at the same time, there was this kind of feeling that will he live up to our expectations? And when Prabhupada arrived at the Sydney temple, the devotees had made a mistake, or there was a misunderstanding about what time he was going to arrive. So we were just getting ready. We'd got this new preaching instrument, this double-decker bus, and I was in the bus, sweeping it out, cleaning it up. We were going to go on the bus and greet Prabhupada at the airport. And as I'm working on cleaning it up, Raghunath, he was the driver of the bus, he suddenly looked up, he said, "Prabhupada's here, Prabhupada's here." And there's a taxi had pulled up inside of in front of the temple. And I ran out, I saw the doors opening, and then Prabhupada stepped out, and I immediately offered my dandavats. And my first impression was that he's so small, physically. But just he took a walk around the grounds, and his presence just dominated everything. Not in a heavy way, very subtle and sublime, but everything was focused on Prabhupada, nothing else. He had just this effulgence. So, yeah, it's good.
And that gave the devotees a lot of confidence as well. Because, you know, at least when I joined, practically the whole country was against the Hare Krishnas at that point in time, you know. And to become a Hare Krishna was like the most antisocial thing you could actually do. You know, you automatically inherited the wrath of, you know, and especially in Adelaide because the publicity surrounding some of the events that had taken place at the temple.
Yeah.
And but that conviction and faith that Prabhupada instilled within the devotees, they just didn't care. They had their own world, all living in the pages of the Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita and everything, you know, in the pastimes of Krishna ultimately and Lord Chaitanya. So, yeah.
Well, you could say that we had an impact far greater than what we felt we were.
Realistically, yes. Yeah, in those days.
And
that's kind of why people complain today. You know, why aren't you doing what people did in the 70s? Right? Why can't we just be like the 70s? that was just a very unique situation. But all of the devotees pretty much sacrificed everything. Yeah. Everything. For Prabhupada. And not that the devotees don't sacrifice now, but it's, you know, they were very dedicated. Okay, anybody else? Any thoughts, comments? Hare Krishna, Grantaraj, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Hare Krishna. Well, hang on. What was that? Very good. Hare Krishna. Well, yeah.
Priya Priya